If I were to ask you in terms of a spy story, what is a mole? You'd know exactly what I was talking about. A mole is an undercover operative in an enemy organization. But you didn't need me to define that for you, and you probably don't need me to define terms like control or honey trap either. I mean, this is basic spy terminology, right? It's used everywhere from the CIA and Secret Service to basic police procedurals on everyday television. But this is part of what I love to call the Shakespeare effect. That is, the effect of an author who creates words and then has those words take wing so universally that when you go back to his work and find that he's explaining them, you wonder why the heck he bothered to explain something that is, at this point in time, so well known. Enter the work of John le Carré, the man who is to the British spy novel what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is to the British mystery novel. I've been reading my way through the classic le Carré spy novels over the last couple of summers, from Call for the Dead to Smiley's People and Tinker Tailor, and this summer I proceeded to The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. And it just so happens that at the same time I was reading The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, I was also watching an ongoing anime called Princess Principal. And at that point I started noticing a lot of similarities between le Carré's work and Princess Principal. I mean, more than just that they were both about spies. But I waved them off because, yes, while le Carré's work definitely has quite the cachet here in the West, or at least in Britain and the US, I don't know what, if any, power it ever held in Japan, and even if it made its way over there, which I have no way of knowing, it still may not have had any sort of staying power. So I waved it off as a pure coincidence based solely on what I was in the middle of, and went about my day, right up until I checked the voice actors page. I was looking up the main character, Anji's voice actor, for a completely unrelated reason, and that's when I discovered that the full name of Princess Principal's protagonist is Anji le Carré. This is not a coincidence. This is a tribute, this is a reference, and we're gonna talk about it. In order to compare the works of le Carré with, or at least the primary works of le Carré, with Princess Principal, as well as talking about where Princess Principal clearly pulls in an inspiration or where it goes on its own merry way, I want to take a few minutes and explain to you the basic outline of le Carré's work so that you have some understanding of what I'm talking about. Le Carré's spy novels, well, let me rephrase. The best of le Carré's spy novels, the most pivotal ones, the ones for which he is known, the ones that most likely made it to Japan, those spy novels take place during the Cold War. They are set in London, and in Russia, and in Germany, and follow the British Secret Service, or rather, the circus as it's referred to, as it tries to undermine Russian control and the Soviet Union. I should be saying Soviet Union because it wasn't Russia at that point. But anyway, point being, the keystone of le Carré's work is that it's not about crazy firefights and sword fights and antics. It's about the manipulation of information. It's about spies in dark places with double drops and backseats. It's about finding the moles and undermining the other organizations. It's spy master versus spy master. And yes, people are dying, but they're not dying in big flashy scenes. They're dying for information. I'm going to focus especially on the works of le Carré that involve his best protagonist, George Smiley. Smiley is an upper-ranking member and sometimes head of British intelligence, and while there are several works that involve him, such as Call for the Dead, and to a lesser extent The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, the ones that really pivotally focus on him, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, commonly referred to as Tinker Tailor, and Smiley's People, follow George Smiley as he attempts to bring down his arch-rival, Carla, who is the head of Russia's intelligence. Princess Principal, meanwhile, takes place in an alternate steampunk version of England. This version of England, which is still known as Albion, which is the name that used to belong to England before it was England, is divided up into two halves, the Kingdom of Albion and the Commonwealth of Albion, divided by a wall. Berlin much? The story follows a group of spies known as Operation Changeling. They are spies from the Commonwealth of Albion who have infiltrated the Kingdom of Albion and are attempting to subvert its policies while also trying to desperately to keep on top of the technology and other things that will affect the war in the long run. Already, despite the steampunk flares and flashes The fact that the characters are teenage and young women, and, well, the whole strangeness of the other world, I'm getting a definitely Le Carré vibe. Because Le Carré operates within two circles. One is London Circus, and the other is Cold War Germany / Cold War Russia. And Princess Principal has sort of managed to combine both settings, keeping us in England, Smiley's home ground, while also providing us with that same sort of Cold War dynamic. But the true heart of a Le Carré novel was the way in which he carefully plotted out the stories, the way in which he carefully constructed the characters, the way in which the plot threads overlapped and relayed across each other, the spy patterns and careful thought that went into everything, and the amount of character writing and character development that went into the stories while also building up the larger narrative. He also didn't really do world-changing events. Le Carré's spies didn't bring down the Berlin Wall, and they didn't bring down the Soviet Union. They just brought down the Russian spy master completely behind the scenes. Everything was behind the scenes. The idea, I presume, is so that it could slot perfectly into our reality without leaving any holes, or places where, well, that didn't really happen, could be put in. In that way, again, Princess Principal really does seem to be following in Le Carré's style. The show is almost episodic, in that every episode the characters are charged with a new mission, and then the episode is about them carrying out said mission, whether it be to steal back something that the kingdom has stolen from the Commonwealth, or to undermine some sort of diplomatic issue, or whatever the case might be. But at the same time, I didn't really think of the story as episodic until I sat down to make this video because, well, each episode puts so much emphasis on characters and character development. Each one spends so much time fleshing out the girls and building them up that it really does feel like a cohesive whole narrative as opposed to just episodic stories in the style of, oh, say, Cardcaptor Sakura. Princess Principal doesn't really seem to have a main antagonist. We've met one character who might end up being one of the main antagonists for the girls in one of the more recent episodes, and it wouldn't surprise me if she was, but we haven't seemed to be building toward any big bad. The lack of an ultimate evil or ultimate antagonist has kept the story from feeling too campy in anime. I mean, yeah, it still feels anime, but not in the same sort of campy over-the-top way that a lot of other shows do. Granted, Chise is kind of a campy character, but the rest of them feel really, really solid. And again, Chise's not a bad character, just like I said, a little campy. But again, these smaller or one-off stories tend to go back to the Le Carré model. He doesn't write about huge things, he writes about smaller things that become big because of the emphasis placed on them by the agents involved. Yes, his stories are ultimately about bringing down the Russian spy master Carla, and yes, that's a big thing, but they're also about a lot of other things. They're about protecting Agent Munt and keeping him from being outed by Fiedler. They're about why the Foreign Office got a denouncement for someone who just got murdered, but left a wake-up call. They're about tracking down the money at a communist gold scene, and about finding the mole within Operation Witchcraft. All of the smaller stories and incidents going into a war of spies, built up and explored to the depths of the characters and people involved, made breath-catching and exciting on the strength of his character writing. And that's really what Princess Principal and Le Carré's novels are about. The one main place where they deviate from each other, besides of course the nature of the characters involved, is, of course, that they take place in two completely different worlds. And that's something I'm super interested in. That is to say, Le Carré's novels don't need a penultimate bad guy or massive change to the universe because they are made to fit seamlessly within a universe that we know very well, having lived in it ourselves. We know the outline of the Cold War, so we don't need them to end the Cold War or change the status quo of the overarching world, because that's something that just isn't needed since, again, it's our world, we know how it works. Whereas in Princess Principal, not having any sort of resolution of that nature might very well feel wrong, feel unfinished. The show may very well need the girls to take down some big bad or have some sort of ultimate goal for them to fulfill in order to feel like it's wrapped up the show properly, and I'm really curious to see what, if anything, the show does with that. Of course, there are hints of some sort of plot along those lines with the princess and her ideals, and Anji and her past, and so I'm really interested to see where it's going. Honestly, just Princess Principal is a really awesome show. It's a tribute to a truly great series of spy novels, and I encourage you to check it out, both the anime and the books. The anime is currently ongoing and basically no one's talking about it, which is really sad considering how damn amazing it is. Seriously, it's definitely one of the best things to come out all year. Great tribute and a great spy story all on its own. You don't need to know anything about Le Carré's work to enjoy how freaking awesome it is. When it comes to a tradition of spies and spy stories, well obviously I can't tell you where this show will go and it might still go downhill, but for now at least this is a must-see for any anime lover who likes spies. I'll definitely give it a review once it finishes airing, but until then you should definitely get up to date. And when you're done doing that and waiting for the next episode, you might as well check out the other videos on my channel. If you like this sort of video, please like and subscribe and let me know what you think down in the comments. This is Coriander Stone, and I thank you for watching.